Hey there, how's everybody doing today? My name is Catherine, and today I will be diving into Intellect Manager and exploring the security risks that really prompted us to build out our secure portal. Now, some of you may have been using this platform already for years. Some of you may have never heard of it. So I'm going to take this as an opportunity to take a step back and explain why we even bothered to develop the portal, and then take you through a couple features that you might not have known about, even if you've been using this portal for years. So in this way, I'm hoping both old and new users should be able to get something out of this. And by the way, one of the offerings that comes with Intellect Manager is our virtual office, but we already have a lot of resources on that. So for the sake of time, which including the Q&A, this I'm hoping won't go over 30 minutes. So for the sake of time, I'll be focusing only on the secure portal today. So just to map out how this webinar is going to go, I will start off by talking about the problem that really pushed us to build the secure portal. Then I will very briefly go over some of the basics of the portal. And then I'll show 4 1-minute long demos, these little mini demos that we pre-recorded that explore potential uses through the lens of a fake company that we made up. And finally, I will open it up for questions. And as I mentioned before, this shouldn't go over 30 minutes, all included. So with that, I will dive right in. Okay, obviously, moving to the cloud, that's a thing that's happened already. I had on this slide the words is migrating, but I changed it to has migrated because I think 94% is a high enough number where we can agree it's happened. The world is migrated to the cloud, but that number is still growing. So the cloud has very quickly become a major part of how businesses run. And we obviously know why, right? I mean, if you just take 5 seconds to think about it, I'm sure you can think of a couple examples right off the top of your head, but I'll just go over a couple that I want to highlight. 3 specifically. The first is increased mobility. You know, you can work from anywhere in the world when you're not tied to a specific location with on-prem software. Reduced overhead is another huge one. I think I read on Forbes that companies have saved between 30 and 50% moving away from the incredibly expensive on-prem solutions and switching to the cloud. And the third one that I wanted to highlight was easier collaboration. And I think this one goes without saying. When you can log on to an app from your laptop or smartphone, the possibilities for collaboration increase dramatically. Case in point, look at how much businesses have been able to accomplish during a pandemic. Like, you would have never been able to imagine this productivity 10, 20 years ago. And the cloud is a large reason why we can really do that now. So the cloud is helping businesses grow in so many ways and helping businesses run in so many ways. But you see that ... that I put after before, that obviously means that there's a but. And can you guess what that is? If you said security, you're absolutely right. In fact, security was voted the biggest risk of cloud computing in a 2020 survey. And it's no surprise why. Moving to the cloud now makes your data only as safe as the platform that it's on and the people who have access to it. So where in the past, someone may have had to physically break into your office to steal your information, now all it takes is one employee who makes their password 12345, or who clicks on a link that they're not supposed to click on. But not only that, it could also be the employee of one of the apps that you're using, or maybe a vulnerability in their computer. If anyone anywhere in the world is able to find a vulnerability and exploit it, your data is completely compromised, which makes you way more vulnerable than you would have been beforehand. And the worst part is these risks multiply with every different application you use, right? So the more people you trust with your data, the more you're exposing yourself to cyber risks. And you'd be surprised as to just how many applications companies are trusting their data to. So a 2020 report found that for small businesses, they use on average 102 different apps. And here's one that really surprised me. When you look at enterprises, they're using around 928, but their CIOs think that they're only using 30 to 40. So my point is, you might have really no idea how much you're exposing yourself to cyber threat, and your CIOs might really not have that visibility. And if you haven't already read IBM's Cost of a Data Breach report, first of all, read it. It's very eye-opening. They put out a new one every year, and it uncovers some really fascinating trends in cyber. But one stat that I want to highlight is that a vulnerability in third-party software was the third most common vector of a data breach. So this is significant. These third-party apps are getting hacked, and businesses are suffering because of it. So what can we do with this? Obviously, we talked about the benefits of cloud-based applications, and we know that we can't just pretend the cloud doesn't exist and go back to the 90s. But that also doesn't mean that we should just blindly trust hundreds of applications with our data, right? So right off the bat, there's a couple things that we can do. And the first is conducting vendor reviews. Basically, you pay a cybersecurity company, usually, to essentially audit your vendors and determine, can they be trusted? Now, we actually do these as a cybersecurity company, and I can tell you they get pretty intense. You know, we're not afraid to set up meetings with the chief information security officers at these companies and ask them all of the uncomfortable questions that they don't want to be asked. But this is a pretty good way of making sure that you aren't being reckless with who you're giving your data to. And by the way, we've reviewed some pretty high profile vendors, and you would be shocked at how many have actually failed our reviews. But anyway, another strategy is implementing a comprehensive information classification policy. And what does this mean? Well, essentially, it means ensuring that nobody's able to access more than they absolutely need to get their job done. So let's say Sally from sales gets hacked. With her credentials, there's really nothing of value that hackers can access. And that's definitely recommended because it helps minimize the vectors for exploitation within your company. And by the way, we also help businesses set these up as part of our technical strategy review. And finally, another good strategy is to have a cyber insurance policy. Now, this is important to emphasize. Cyber insurance does not mean I can do what I want, and if I get hacked, it'll be fine because I have insurance. If that's the attitude that you have, odds are no insurer will want to give you a policy. And if you do have a policy, it doesn't cover nearly what you think it does. And that second part is true in general. People often overestimate their cyber coverage. We actually offer policy reviews as well. So if you have any doubts about your cyber coverage, we can help you look at your cyber policy and tell you honestly what is and isn't covered. But normally what we tell our clients is that they should view insurance as a backup to their backup plan. That being said, it can still help you in your risk management strategy, definitely. So these are all good ways to help minimize risk. And it goes without saying that these would go on top of your regular prevention and mitigation strategies, such as training, pen testing. These are just some of the ones that will help mitigate the risk in this context with vendors. So as I mentioned, we work with clients to implement all of these. So obviously we see their value, but are they foolproof? Unfortunately, no. I can tell you with authority that if you want them done also, they are expensive if you want them done well. And that might be fine if you have 3 or 4 vendors that you trust. You can, put that money for the vendor reviews. But if you're using over 100, as we saw before, it doesn't really make financial sense. And while we're on the topic of expenses, having that many apps often ends up with a total cost of ownership that is a lot higher than people realize. I mean, even if you were to just think about it from an onboarding perspective, every new app that you use is a new app that you have to train people for, and that time adds up quickly. And you might say, oh, they can figure it out on their own. We don't need to train them, which is fine, except that it still wastes a ton of their time as they try to figure it out by themselves. And that's also a pretty great way of ensuring that they aren't going to learn how to use it in accordance with your information classification policy that you spent good time and money developing. And the fact of the matter is, though these will help reduce your risk, they're never 100% secure. Never. Even if the vendors have passed security reviews, they're only as secure as their weakest link, which is normally an employee who doesn't do what they're supposed to do. So we looked at the benefits of the cloud. We talked about the security risks. We looked at potential ways to manage the risk, and then we looked at their shortcomings. So what do we do? What is the best way to truly minimize your vectors of exploitation when using cloud applications? And the answer is pretty simple, but if you really want to minimize your risks, you need to minimize your surface area or the amount of apps that you're using. And you need to make sure that the apps that you do use are very secure and chosen very intentionally. And this is something that we truly had to accept a while ago. But when there's so many apps doing so many things, how can you choose between them? What do you prioritize? So this is really what inspired us to create our portal. We set out to make a sophisticated knowledge management portal with security at its heart that can be customized for several different use cases to reduce the use of different cloud services as much as possible. So what did we prioritize when making this portal? First, obviously, security. As mentioned earlier, security is one of the most significant risks when moving to the cloud. And obviously, there's the security that comes from the fact that because we are using this portal, we can significantly reduce the other apps we're using. But also within this portal, it's been built with military-grade encryption, keeping security as the top priority, following best-in-class security measures. And the second is simplicity. We've built Intellect Manager in such a way that you can customize it for countless use cases, as I mentioned, and that allows you to dramatically reduce the amount of apps that you need to use. And we do this by keeping Intellect Manager simple. We combine a clean, simple interface with powerful but easy to understand functionality. And that also makes onboarding very straightforward. And finally, we are an AI company, so we wanted this portal to be sophisticated. Here at Intellect Map, we have a patented expert system technology, which basically uses AI to guide people through very complex topics. And we work with clients to build out their own expert systems around their own topics. So we built this portal to seamlessly integrate with our AI. So if there's a topic that you want to build AI capability for, it can be accessed on this portal. So when taking into account the basic functionality, we really wanted to make this as versatile as possible. So a couple of common capabilities that I will just speed right through. You can find these anywhere in the portal. The first is assigning. So when you assign something to someone, they get a notification by email, and it also gives you editing privileges, or the person that's been assigned it. You can also organize things by folders, which is very self-explanatory. We've built a very sophisticated search functionality so that nothing gets lost on the portal, and you can always find what you're looking for. And finally, we've made levels very simple and straightforward, which goes hand in hand with your information classification framework. And that basically just means that it's really easy to assign who is allowed to access what. Now, this doesn't mean much on its own, but basically with these functions, we can use the portal for countless use cases. And here's just a couple of examples. If you're a current user, you might be familiar with the invoice management example, as that is a very popular use case at the moment. But there's so much more that you can do with the portal. So now we're going to explore just a couple examples of this. So we've created 4 one-minute long videos that explore various scenarios in the portal. And these are from the point of view of a fictional company called Internet Baton. And it's loosely following the story arc of a certain Paul, who is a salesperson at this company and just started. So with that, let's dive in to these videos and go over a couple use cases. So the first is task management. So let me just play this video. Internet Baton has just hired a new salesperson, Paul, who needs a company laptop.
Kelly in HR, who has been handling his recruitment, isn't able to manage this process, so she needs to hand it off to Robert, who works in IT. First, she navigates to the Human Resources Department and then enters the Task Manager service area. There, she can create a task for Robert, providing relevant information and filling out details, such as priority and due date, as needed. Finally, she assigns it to him so that he can get notified of the task. Once she assigns it to him, he'll be able to edit the task entry, marking it complete once he's finished. In this way, Internet Baton is able to efficiently manage their cross-functional tasks.
All right, so the next is employee onboarding. We'll look at employee onboarding using links and FAQ pages. It's Paul's first day on the job at Internet Baton, and there's a lot he needs to learn about the company. Thankfully, the team at Internet Baton have used Intellect Manager to compile some helpful resources to make onboarding easy for him.
For example, Paul can browse the FAQ in the General Admin department to get answers to common onboarding questions, like how to set up email. He can also visit the links page within the Sales department to view helpful external resources compiled by the team. In addition to browsing, his manager can assign specific resources to him, which sends a notification to his email. Paul can even conduct a sophisticated search across all departments. Thanks to Intellect Manager, Paul feels prepped and ready for day one.
Okay, and now we'll briefly look at relationship management. I think this example is business development, but you can really think about it in the terms of any kind of relationship management.
Paul's first goal at Internet Baton is to work on boosting sales on an existing account. His manager, Catherine, uses Intellect Manager to ensure Paul can quickly learn about the account and how he should proceed. Using the client directory area of the sales department, she opens up the existing entry for the account she wants Paul to manage. Here she can view all the relevant and important information about the account, as well as any related files. Catherine can then set a recommended action and due date, assigning the account over to Paul so he can make edits. With Intellect Manager, Paul can easily prepare for his sales call.
Okay, and finally, let's look at file management.
Lisa from marketing and Paul from sales are working together on a presentation for a client. To securely share her presentation, Lisa enters the library service area, opening the folder the team uses to store pitch decks. There, she uploads her presentation and assigns it to Paul, thereby granting him editing privileges. Once Paul has made his edits, he re-uploads it to the portal, selecting Create Versions so the team can still view the old version. He decides he wants collaboration from the broader team, so he assigns it to everyone, giving everyone editing privileges. Since it's assigned to everyone, now when Lisa wants to make additional edits, she checks out the document, so others can't access it while she's working on it. In this way, the team can easily store, share, and collaborate on files.
All right, so with that, I would like to thank you for your time today and now turn it around and open it up for questions. You can ask us anything about cybersecurity, the portal, really anything. We're here to answer your questions. Also, if you have any questions after this webinar, feel free to shoot an email to marketing@intellectmap.com. Okay, so with that, just feel free to send over any questions.